Hi, and welcome back to Grade 6 History and Social Studies Understanding Us. My name is Ms. Burrows, and this week we are going to be learning about Sojourner Truth and the women's suffrage movement. First, I want to make sure that you're feeling okay. If you're anything like me, the weather can seriously determine how my day is going to go. So if you need a second to rest or just chill, go ahead and do so. But if you feel ready to go, then let's keep moving. First thing is that you're going to need either a piece of paper or a notebook and a pen or pencil. Here's what's going on today. First, we're going to go through our goals. Then we're going to go over our words of the day. Then I'm going to take you through the story or the T of Sojourner Truth and the women's suffrage movement. And finally, we're going to end with our mission. Okay, so here are your hashtag goals for today. First, you're going to define suffrage. Second, determine when and how the suffrage movement began. And finally, analyze secondary and primary sources to explain Sojourner Truth's role in the women's suffrage movement. Okay, here are our words of the day. Ms. Burrows, you keep talking about suffrage. What does suffrage mean? Okay, I'm here to tell you. Suffrage is the right to vote in political elections. So if we're talking about the women's suffrage movement in the United States, we're talking about women working towards getting the right to vote in the United States. An abolitionist is a word you're going to hear come up a few times in this lesson. An abolitionist is a person who believes in the abolition or end of slavery. The 19th Amendment prohibits the states and the federal government from denying the right to vote to citizens of the United States on the basis of sex. Remember that an amendment is a change or addition to the Constitution. What makes it the 19th Amendment is that it comes after the 18th, and you don't have to be good at math to understand that. So basically, this is the amendment that is going to grant women suffrage, all right? So now I'm going to give you the tea on how that happened and who was involved from the beginning, especially our girl Sojourner Truth. What was the suffrage movement? Okay, this was nearly a 100-year movement to win the right to vote for women in the United States. Suffragists also advocated for women's access to education, property ownership, and overall equality. That is why you will see on our timeline for today, I put to be continued, because suffrage isn't just about giving women the right to vote, and it didn't just end in 1920 when the 19th Amendment was ratified. It is this long-term movement to grant women equality that in some ways is still happening today. We're going to start looking at these one at a time, starting in 1848. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton meets with other female activists and plans a convention in Seneca Falls, New York. Now, this doesn't mean that 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton is the first person to ever say, hey, I think women should have an equal right to vote. No, okay? But this is kind of marked as the beginning of the organizing of the movement. So who is Elizabeth Cady Stanton? Well, this is her, okay? She was an early leader for women's rights, and she was a suffragist, and she was an abolitionist, and she was also an author. She wrote a lot of things convincing people that women should have the right to vote and kind of just about the state of women's rights in the United States. Okay, in 1851 is when our star of today, Sojourner Truth, gives her Ain't I a Woman speech. Okay, who is Sojourner Truth? Well, this is her. She was born into slavery and she escaped with her daughter in 1826. She was a suffragist, she was an abolitionist, and she was a human rights activist. And if you think, wow, she sounds pretty cool, I know, that's why we're going to spend the rest of today's lesson on her. Before we do that, let's keep moving. In 1890, something called NASA, not NASA, like the spaceships, but NASA, is created by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, we know her, and Susan B. Anthony. Who's that? Okay, Susan B. Anthony is a suffragist and abolitionist as well. She was also a leader of the temperance movement, which was a movement mostly organized by women to make alcohol illegal in the United States because they felt that that was kind of the source of a lot of their issues, especially with men in the United States and their husbands and their fathers, etc. She was also an author and a speaker. Okay, and what was NAWSA? NAWSA stands for National American Women's Suffrage Association, and it was actually the result of two different groups coming together. Those two groups were kind of had it at odds for a while, but when those two came together, their main strategy was to win suffrage state by state and then pass a constitutional amendment. So before the 19th Amendment gets passed, the main goal is just to try to get your state to say, yes, we will allow women the equal right to vote in state elections or in local elections. Okay, in 1896, another organization, NACW, is created. It's founded by Mary Church Terrell and other leaders such as Frances Harper. What does NACW stand for? It is the National Association for Colored Women. This was created because Black women were often excluded from women's rights organizations and activities like the one mentioned in NAWSA. This group advocated for a wide range of reforms outside of suffrage to improve life for African Americans and especially African American women. The leader and one of the founders, Frances Harper, said no race can afford to neglect the enlightenment of its mothers. In 1920 is when the 19th Amendment is ratified. So even from 1848 to 1920 is how long it takes from those first couple of meetings in Seneca Falls to get the 19th Amendment passed. And the thing is that many of the early leaders weren't even alive when it happened. Sojourner Truth died in 1883, Elizabeth Cady Stanton died in 1902, Susan B. Anthony died in 1906. But what's important is that it paved the way for other women to make a platform and a space for women to advocate for themselves, and generations after could come and do the same thing. So now we're going to take it back to our girl, Sojourner Truth. So I want you to write on your little piece of paper, Sojourner Truth fact sheet. Now, what I'm about to tell you is my opinion, and that opinion is that Sojourner Truth was a boss, okay? But in history, we can't just say things that we think. We have to have evidence for what we believe, all right? And I'm gonna get you guys some information from secondary sources and primary sources to prove that Ms. Burroughs is right, that Sojourner Truth was a boss. Okay, here is a list of some evidence or some facts from a secondary source, the National Women's History Museum website. They give a really good biography of Sojourner Truth, and I took some notes about it and put them on this slide. What I want you to do is, on your fact sheet, I want you to make a list of things as I say them out loud that you think are important to know about Sojourner Truth. And let me just tell you, this is barely scratching the surface on this woman's life, but here it is. She was born into slavery in 1797 in New York as Isabella Baumfree. She later changes her name. She escaped with her daughter to an abolitionist family who ended up buying her freedom. Once they buy her freedom, she successfully sues for the return of her other child, her 5-year-old son, Peter. She became a preacher, and while she never learned to read or write, she orated her own biography, meaning she spoke it out loud and had someone else write it, which is going to be a little bit problematic, but we'll see that. She worked with abolitionists Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison. She gave speeches about the evils of slavery, which actually led her to meet President Lincoln. And when the Civil War started, she urged young men to join the Union cause and organize supplies for Black troops. If your fact sheet looks exactly like this, I will be super impressed. However, that would be you copying down literally every word that I said, which you don't need to do. Just make a little list of facts from that slide, and once you do, you can keep it moving. What you're going to do underneath is write, "Ain't I a Woman?" speech analysis, and you're going to have your beginning, middle, and end. What we're going to do now is look at a primary source from Sojourner Truth to get some more information about her. to prove that she's a boss. Okay, so before I even get into this speech, I need to tell you something that is kind of a historical debate right now. There are two different versions of this speech, and one of them doesn't even have the phrase "ain't I a woman," except we're going to continue to refer to it as that. It's important to tell you this because I'm going to choose only one to show you today, but you have the resources available to you to look at both. The one that we are going to use today is the one that you see on the left. Marius Robinson's transcription and this of the speech, so he transcribed it. There is no real written down version of it, but he has a written down version of it that he transcribed, and it came out about 4 weeks, 1 month after she gave the speech. All right. Now, that is not the one that we've been using for years and years and years. The one that's been in circulation for years and is very popular and common is the one on the right that came 14 years after she gave this speech, and it seems a little bit inaccurate. When you look at them side by side, the one on the right makes Sojourner Truth sound like she doesn't speak in complete sentences, she doesn't have good English. She has kind of a slang and a accent to her voice. And while any of that could have been true, we know she didn't know how to read or write. It gives this perception of her that she is not intelligent, and we know that she was a very good speaker, and so it's not really the best interpretation. So we're going to stick with the one that came 1 month after instead of the one that came 14 years after, and I hope you understand why. All right, first we're going to look at the beginning section. I'm going to read it, and I just want you to think the whole time, what is she trying to say, and how can I put this into my own words? I have as much muscle as any man, and can do as much work as any man. I've plowed and reaped and husked and chopped and mowed, and can any man do more than that? I have heard much about the sexes being equal. I can carry as much as any man, and can eat as much too, if I can get it. I am as strong as any man that is now. Go to your sheet, and that little space you left for the beginning, I want you to put the beginning of her speech into your own words. You need to go back and pause it and take a second to do that. By all means, go ahead. All right, now we're going to move to the middle section. As for intellect, all I can say is, if women have a pint and man a quart, why can't she have her little pintful? You need not be afraid to give us our rights, for fear we will take too much, for we can't take more than our pint will hold. The poor men seem to be all in confusion and don't know what to do. All right, same thing as last time. I want you to put that into your own words where it says middle on your sheet. When you're ready, keep moving. Finally, the end section. I can't read, but I can hear. I have heard the Bible and have learned that Eve caused man to sin. Well, if women upset the world, do give her a chance to set it right side up again. Okay, that's the final section that I want you to put into your own words. Put these into your own words. Make sure you have the beginning, middle, and end, and pause, and when you're ready, keep moving. Now, from looking at the facts and looking at the secondary sources and looking at the primary sources, I know you hate to hear this, but I'm right? She's a boss, okay? This speech is all about saying that women are equal to men. We can do as much as men do, and if not more, and if we are the ones who are apparently the downfall of society, then give us that power to bring it back up. She killed the game, okay? She paved the way for so many women. So what you're going to do today is you are going to create a celebrity interview with Sojourner Truth. Basically, you're Oprah, okay? You're Ellen. You are going to sit down with our girl Sojourner Truth and ask her the questions that you want to know. Now, I know that she's not alive, okay? You're not meeting with a ghost. This is just a list of hypothetical questions that you would like to ask. I want you to create a list of 10 questions to ask her. When writing each question, I want you to ask her stuff that you actually want to know. You don't have to just ask her history type stuff. Ask her stuff you want to know about her. Does she have a husband? How many kids did she have? What did she like to do? What were her hobbies? Things like that. Reveal that you already know some information. Celebrities like Sojourner Truth really like it when you do this, right? For example, I read that you worked with Frederick Douglass. What was that like? Okay? They like it when you already know a little something about them. It makes the interview feel more personal, more intimate, very, very nice interview. Okay? And finally, you want to tell her your interpretation of the speech and get her input. For example, in the beginning of your speech, I noticed this. Is that what you were trying to say? That will also make her feel super connected to you, and it shows that you've done your research before your interview. Exciting to hear what you guys' questions are for Sojourner Truth. I probably have the same. Until then, I want you to read this quote from her. I feel safe in the midst of my enemies, for the truth is all-powerful and will prevail. This is on the door to my classroom. Thank you guys so much. I am excited to hear your interview questions, and I will see you next week.